How do you build a high-performing culture? This is Culture Architects. Candid conversations with extraordinary leaders sharing their biggest successes, failures, and lessons learned on their culture journeys. Here's David J. Friedman.
So welcome to today's episode of Culture Architects. I'm pleased to have with me today Crystal Hanlon. Crystal is the Senior Vice President and Culture Officer at the Home Depot. As I'm sure most people know, Home Depot is the world's largest home improvement retailer, founded in 1978. Crystal began her journey with the company back in 1985 as a part-time cashier, believe it or not, while studying at the University of Houston. Over the decades, she's been there 39 years now, she has steadily risen through the ranks. She's played so many different roles. She's also earned a spot on Fortune magazine's list of the most powerful women multiple times during this period of her career, proving herself to be a key witness to Home Depot's growth and culture building. In 2023, after almost 40 years, as I said, with the company, Crystal was appointed Senior Vice President and Culture Officer. So nobody knows more about the culture of Home Depot than Crystal. So Crystal, welcome to the Culture Architects podcast.
Thank you, David. I'm excited to be with you today.
That's great. So let's go back and just for our audience sake, let's get a little bit of history here. So I'm taking us back to 1985, 39 years ago. What led you to go work at Home Depot? How'd that happen?
This is an interesting story because back then I was going to University of Houston to be a physical therapist. And
physical
I was
therapy, Home Depot, that makes sense.
I was upside down. I needed to pay my bills, and I saw a now hiring sign at Home Depot. We didn't even know what it was because I started in Texas. It wasn't real famous at the time. And I went in and got a job, and they gave me the $5 an hour. And I got to tell you, best thing that ever happened to me because I started to really understand the culture. And when I first started, I didn't. They kept telling me how great Home Depot was and all the dreams that you can make happen with Home Depot. I had a great assistant manager named Butch Moody. He was amazing. A lot of passion telling me the dream of Home Depot. And basically, two things happened. He kept coming every day telling me how great this culture and company was. And then we did a Team Depot project as a cashier. We went out and built a little wheelchair ramp for a little boy. And when he rolled down that ramp, and we pieced that thing together, and he rolled down that ramp, his joy and the tears in his parents' eyes just made me understand the orange-blooded culture. And I started to fall in love with my coworkers and the company, and it's just been an amazing journey. I'm so thankful I found that now hiring sign.
That's very cool. So you graduated college. You were going to be a physical therapist, you said. And so what caused you to say, well, I think I'm not, I know you loved the Home Depot culture back then, but if you were thinking of being a physical therapist, that it would be unusual for someone to say, well, I think I'll skip the physical therapy route and go work for a home building retailer.
Absolutely. It was the craziest thing. Everybody thought it was crazy. But I'll tell you, the reason I stayed is because I felt the values of the company. Our 8 fundamental values and everything that we stood for align with my personal value statement. And the camaraderie and the teamwork, it was like an orange-blooded family. And I felt committed to our people and our customers. And it just gave me this purpose, my why. It gave me a beautiful purpose inside of a company at the same time my personal life because it aligned with all of my personal values. And, we're allowed to give back. We can make so many differences in the lives of others. And it just fit. So I learned everything I know about retail from the cashier all the way to president at Home Depot because of the learning and the training they gave us.
And so talk about some of the different roles that you've played over your career. I know you've gone through quite a few different, from starting as a cashier to your role now.
Oh, David, I've moved up in every role. I was department head, assistant manager, store manager. That was one of my favorite roles because I had about 115 associates I got to see every day. It was like a family of 115 people, watching them grow and develop. That was one of my favorites. And then I was district manager of several stores and then moved up to vice president of operations and then vice president of merchandising. So I kind of had both. And those were beautiful roles. And then after that, I was division president of the Northeast Division, one of the biggest divisions in the company. And it was the most rewarding part of my career because I had so many people and I could change so many lives. But then my favorite role of all times is the role I hold now. Because this culture officer role means that I work for everybody and I make a difference and I teach them the dream of Home Depot. And I want people to have that opportunity because, you know, like I said, when I started, I had absolutely zero trying to survive life. And I've been blessed with all of the people and the relationships. It's like a family inside of a family. It's amazing. And so this role, I can give back every day to the lives of others. And to me, that is so rewarding. So this is my favorite chapter I've had.
So as you've stepped into this role, we'll go back and go through a lot more of that history. But as you stepped into this role, was this a new role that was created and you were the person in it? Or was there somebody in that role before that you replaced?
There was somebody in the role for about a year and a half, but when I took it, they expanded it to where I had communication. So I had a vehicle to tell the story of our people and to connect with the heartstrings of our people. So it was more of an expanded role when I took it. And it has given me the platform to connect with all of our associates, the 475,000 associates out there through storytelling and through hope, you know, telling the story of hope of what they can do. 90% of the population that runs Home Depot started it on the grassroots of the store or, you know, entry-level positions and have now created wealth for their families and their friends. It's just this amazing story that people really don't understand about retail. I mean, people think retail, oh, I don't want to be in retail, but I'm telling you, it is the best place to be. Only at Home Depot, though. Everybody else, you can't go anywhere and have the culture that we have. We bring it to life every day. We live it.
So let's go back to how that all started. So I know the two founders. I'm seeing them. Those of you that will see video of this will be able to see this, but those that are listening won't. So I'm looking at Crystal, and behind her are paintings of the two founders, Arthur Blank and who's the other founder?
Bernie Marcus.
And Bernie Marcus. And so did the values that you have your values wheel with your 8 corporate values, did it start with the two of them or where did that originally come from?
Yes, it did. And this is what's such an amazing story. Bernie was my mentor coming through the ranks.
Okay.
You know, he's amazing. So is Arthur. Both of those individuals are unbelievably passionate. And when they started Home Depot, you know, they'd gotten fired from Handy Dan, so they didn't have anything. They created our story on a napkin. And when you think about where it started, they laid the 8 core values out because they wanted to be a good employer for people and to make a difference for the customer. So they aligned those 8 values many years ago. And then the inverted pyramid they put in place where the leadership team works for the people and works for the customer, whatever the customer needs. And it's a different leadership style that they created many years ago. And those are our symbols, the inverted pyramid and the 8 core values. And every decision we've made, we have lived by these 8 core values, taking care of people. I mean, it's fundamental, but it's also a recipe for success because it aligns everybody. And we bring it to life in all of our decision making. So they started it many years ago, beginning of the company, and it has lived strong throughout my entire 39 years. And I'm sure everybody else's, because it gives us our compass of the North Star. What do we need to make a decision on? Let's run it through the values and see the right answer. Find the right answer through that.
So let's. I want to get more into I would call it maybe the nuts and bolts of how you teach, support, reinforce that culture in an organization that's as large and diverse as Home Depot. You said 475,000 associates. That's a lot of people, and candidly, most of my experience and most of the people that we talk to on our podcasts are, I would call them smaller to mid-size entrepreneurial companies that have somebody started it and they have 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 people. And, you know, how you go about building culture in a company of 200 or 300 people is very different than the challenges that you're faced with of 500,000 people all over the world. So how do you make that real and consistent across an organization that large and widespread?
Well, we had to find a common definition of culture because every leader you talk to would have a little different flavor. So we set the stage on what culture really means for Home Depot. And our culture is a culture of safety and service for our associates, our customers, and our communities. That's the fundamental line of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But culture you have to bring to life. So when we talk about it, this is the fundamental of what our culture is. How do you bring that to life with the inverted pyramid and the values wheel? The way we do that is through storytelling of our people and the amazing heroes that are in aprons every day, that do the right thing, that connect the hearts of our people with our leadership teams. Everyone knows that the way to bring culture to life is connection. And we do that through our HDTV studio, through our storytelling, through our leadership training. We connect our why. And our why is to make a difference for our customers, bring their dreams to life through having great, happy associates. And our leadership team works on that every day to have an environment to where you bring that culture to life in a store. If you've got 150 people in a store, how do you connect their hearts? And the way you do that is you stop, listen, you connect their hearts with the story of the great opportunities at Home Depot that exist, because it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do it from a training perspective. We train every day on culture. We walk the talk on culture, bringing those values to life and really focusing on the inverted pyramid and making sure we take the time to serve our people so that they can serve the customer and the communities. We do so much in the communities as well, and just really connecting them with their why.
So when you talk about you train every day on your culture, what does that look? I get hired. I'm an associate. I'm a cashier like you were all those years ago, and I'm working at my local Home Depot store. How am I getting trained in that culture?
Everybody goes through orientation, and that's through our store manager training the associates.
Okay.
And they talk about the culture of Home Depot and the opportunity to make all your dreams come true. And they tell stories about what they've done. And most of our leaders, like I said, started on the floor and can talk about what it's done for their lives. And they tell those stories to connect with the associates that are coming in. And then we've got Team Depot training. We've got coaches within the store that talk and teach the culture, mm-hmm. and really try to make it through the walking the talk, with the leadership teams, to make them feel part of something bigger than they are. And when you connect those heartstrings at the good onset, they stay more committed as they come through their journey.
So I'm guessing when we talk, and there's so many different places we can go in this conversation, but what you just said led me to think about turnover. And I'm imagining that, you mentioned the fact that you've got many of the people who are leaders today grew up in the Home Depot culture, bleed orange, as you would say, and they've grown up in the system. They've stayed for all these years. Obviously, people talk about turnover as a real challenge in retail, maybe more so than many industries. So I would assume that you must have some statistics about typical turnover rates in that industry and where Home Depot ranks in that. What would be normal turnover, and where's Home Depot in that?
We've actually reduced our turnover because we did, throughout COVID and all the changing environments, we had higher turnover in those years.
Sure.
But we've reduced that. And the way we do that is to connect the associates coming in, because we have 6 generations in our stores now, mm-hmm. 6 generations, and they each have a different hook of why do they want to stay with Home Depot, right? Mm-hmm. You have to change your style for each generation.
Okay.
So we're doing training now on the different generations and why do particular groups want to stay with us. And that's helping on our overall turnover. And then the VOA, voice of the associate, listening to their needs and reacting and taking action on their feedback. We try to do that as well so that we can have a good work environment, mm-hmm. for everybody.
We talk about culture all the time. And one of the questions that some will ask, it's intuitively obvious to you and me that if we take care of our people, they're going to take care of better. They're going to do a better job taking care of customers. They're going to stay with us longer. There are all these benefits that come. And yet there are those who, outside of the intuitively obvious fact of that, will want to know, well, can you prove that to me? Like, what's the return on investment in all this effort that we're putting into culture? And so how else do you measure the return on investment? The company must make more money because of this.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
not the only reason to do it. So how do you measure that? How do you know what the return on investment on your culture is?
So we have a leadership behavior score for every store. And you can tell based off the leadership behavior scores where we are from a cultural perspective. And that's where we really measure it to say, okay, are we doing really well? And obviously turnover plays a big part of that because we want to keep our people as long as we can. But it's a proven fact. If you get people to connect with your culture and have their why, that they are more committed, 30% more committed in most cases because of their understanding of our culture. And so we do that through leadership behaviors, respect for all associates, and making sure that we have that good environment for them. Because a lot of times when you're coming into one of our stores as an associate, the environment's not perfect out there. Many times when an associate's coming into their workday for Home Depot, they're in a safer environment than in their own homes in many cases in some markets. And so how do we make it the best experience for them to where they feel the joy and the fun at work at the same time, give everything they've got to make the customer happy? And that's what Bernie always said. You take care of your associates, they'll take care of the customer, and everything else takes care of itself. Bernie himself quoted that, and he taught me that many years ago. And I believe that to be true when you think about the stores that do really well. The stores that have high leadership behaviors and great engagement scores do much better from a sales perspective and from an overall perspective because you've got engaged associates that really care about the customer. And you can feel it. That's what Ted calls the buzz in our stores. That buzz is connection. And when you've got a connected environment in your store, you can walk in and people are happy. They're waiting on the customer. They're doing the emotional connection with the customer. And you can feel if a store has that buzz immediately upon entering.
Yeah. So the way you can then, in a sense, measure or justify, I say justify, I don't mean like, we got to prove that this is really valid, but you can, what's the word I want? You can verify the impact of culture, if I'm hearing you right, by saying, look, we got lots and lots of stores, and we can track which ones have the best engagement scores, which ones have the best leadership scores, and map that. We could graph that. And if we graph that, we would see this strong correlation between higher leadership scores and higher engagement scores equal higher sales performance.
Absolutely. There's no question. You can feel it when you walk into a store. I can tell you in 15 minutes in a store, whether the culture's alive or not, and the connection, because it's all about connecting the hearts of people. We're in a people business, right? I mean, customers, associates, and communities. The other thing that connects them is the Team Depot projects that we do, where we do work across the country in all of our communities. And that really connects the why you want to shop at Home Depot. You see these orange shirts out there changing lives every day, making a difference for our veterans, making a difference in the communities. And you see the sea of orange giving their volunteer hours to make a difference in people's lives. And then people connect. And that's what makes people, one of the reasons they turn left into Home Depot versus any other competitor, because they have that connection in their communities. And that's been extremely well thought out from an overall perspective to give back.
Nice. So when you said that when you walk into a store, you can feel the vibe and you can tell when you've got the buzz, as you said, Ted talks about. And for those that don't know, Ted Decker is the CEO. So that's the Ted we're talking about. When you walk into a store and the vibe isn't there, I mean, if you've got hundreds and hundreds of, how many stores do you have right now, roughly?
2,300 plus.
So 2,300 stores. There have to be some stores where they're not performing at the same level that others are from a culture standpoint. You got 2,300 of them. They're not all going to be perfect. When you see a store that isn't thriving from a culture standpoint, what's your experience as to what are the biggest drivers for that? Like what causes one store to not be thriving when others are?
I tell you, the key ingredient is leadership when you have a lack of culture, because too many times in those situations, either the leader is not engaging with their associates, not taking the time to hear their needs, to help them, to walk the talk from a customer perspective and generate that excitement in the store. And, that to me is where the culture goes south. If you've got a store manager or an assistant manager that truly is not living the values of our fundamental 8 values in our inverted pyramid, obviously you're not going to have the connections with the people. And that's one of the biggest opportunities for us. That's why we spend so much time leaning in on leadership training and culture training to make them understand our why, so that we can convey that in the store and bring people in with us and keep them with us.
Yeah. So you talk about bringing people in. I'm curious, what do you do from a hiring standpoint to increase the odds that the person you're hiring is likely to be a good fit in the Home Depot culture?
We have a talent acquisition team that does the interview questions and asks proper questions to make sure that to see if they could be a good fit for us. Obviously, they weed out who isn't and who is, and can do centralized hiring for our field. And that's been very beneficial because they ask those key questions to try to find the best candidates we can. And obviously, we're not going to get that right 100% of the time, but we're doing very well on that.
And do you know what some of those kinds of questions are like? How do you surface if somebody's going to be a good fit for Home Depot?
Well, obviously, you have to ask the question, do you want to wait on a customer? What is your experience with the customer? How do you feel about a customer experience? And make sure that they're engaging, make sure they ask those basic questions. I haven't got the list of the questions for you, but I can get those. No,
I'm just curious if you, off the top of your head, know, oh yeah, we always ask these kinds of things because that really gets to the heart of it. So let's go back to, I want to go back to your start at Home Depot. And you said you were in college, you were going to be a physical therapist, and you decided you had this experience at Home Depot and said, oh my God, this just really connects with me. And I'm curious about, often I find at least that as I reflect back on things that I learned, I see them differently today than I did then. So let me give you a simple example. What I learned in my first company, I built a company. I was the CEO of a company for many years, and we were known for our culture. It's what made us successful. It's what led to all the things that I teach and write about today. But in my early days as a leader, I wasn't actually thinking about culture. I was thinking about what I call standards, that I had very high standards for how I wanted our people to operate. And I realized early on that the only way I can get that consistently happening is for me to articulate those and to teach it to people so that everybody understood this is how we do things here. It was only in retrospect that I realized, I guess that's kind of really what culture is. This was back in the early 80s. And so, culture wasn't such a hot topic, as you know, back then. It was more of an unusual topic. And so again, I wasn't thinking about culture at that time. I was just thinking about standards. It was only later that I had a deeper appreciation for what I had done is I had built culture, even though I wasn't thinking of building culture at the time. And so I'm curious from your perspective, you're getting out of college. Not many college kids, and maybe you were different, but not most college kids aren't thinking about culture. They just later realize, I guess what really drew me is the culture. So when in your career did this light bulb go off for you that culture was really important? Was it right from the beginning, or was it later upon further reflection of those experiences, do you think?
I believe if you think back, because I've been asked this question many times. And it all goes back. The first few months I didn't, obviously, even though I was in orientation and they talked about the orange blood. I'm like, okay, whatever. I got
work to do.
And I just knew I needed to come back to pay my bills. But what really changed me, and I started to understand it, was honestly connecting with the people that I was working with. We were all in there trying to make it together. And connecting with them and making a difference for people. Like I said, on the Team Depot project, that made me understand culture, because it made me understand that culture is all about connection. And for me, it was making a difference for others that changed me with Home Depot. Because when we would go out on those Team Depot projects, we would get to see people that were just trying to make it through life, that couldn't make ends meet. And we were out there making their environment better. And honestly, it connected with my heartstrings. And the connection of the heartstrings with the associates that I worked with, it was like we were a family inside of a family with the orange Home Depot apron. And, when they first said orange blooded, I thought they were crazy. But I'm telling you, after the first couple months with Butch Moody, he kept coming back and telling me, all these things I could do. And then I'm still thinking at that point to be a physical therapist, but he was relentless in his approach to tell me about Home Depot and all the things you could do and tell me his story. And then the team depots that we did and just making it through the day together, it just connected. And then it became more about not just me, but making it better for my peers, the customers, and, just seeing people be happier based on the experience you have with them was our culture. And I did feel it. And that's what made me stay, because I had no intentions of staying. I never thought I'd be here. I'm so thankful I am, but I never planned it. It was not a planned thing. And then many of our leaders will tell you the same thing. We were just coming in trying to make it for the summer. And ended up, most people that are leaders with us will tell you, they didn't plan on staying. They were just coming in to pay their bills and try to make it, and ended up falling in love with the culture. It's the craziest thing, but it's real. So for me, it was a couple months into it.
Interesting. So that brings us to the end of the first part of my conversation with Crystal Hanlon, Senior Vice President and Culture Officer at the Home Depot. When we come back in the next episode, Crystal shares more about the rituals with which they reinforce the culture at Home Depot, the initiatives she's proudest of from her 4-decade career, and what she thinks is the biggest threat today to the Home Depot culture.
This has been Culture Architects with David J. Friedman. Join us next time for more insights and wisdom from great leaders in all walks of life. To book David for your next event, or to learn more about his writing, speaking, or consulting, go to davidjfriedman.com. Culture Architects with David J. Friedman is a production of CultureWise.